Hello, friends, distant acquaintances. So, I'm going to talk a bit about how there's always more to say. And, like you might think, oh, yeah, people have probably had this exact same conversation before. And this is, not, there's no new ideas under the sun and all that. I don't think that's actually true. I think, yeah, there's some conversations and ideas and stuff that have already been put forward, but there's genuine novelty, just like the first time the Big Bang happened, or the second time it happened. No, first time like a sun formed, or a planet formed, or a pyramid was built, or whatever it is, or like the internet was made, or all kinds of, or poetry, poems which are unique. Thing is, like, the amount of possibilities, like, say if you take the number of words in a dictionary and then obviously you can't just put them all together, and there's a bunch of sentences that don't mean anything, kind of nonsense. But you know like, if you even taking that into account and reducing it by like 100-fold or whatever, the things which would make sense or whatever, there's so many options for putting the meaning. And how many poems could you make? If there's so many words, and combinations of the words, where it gets to the point where it's like, if you've got a phone number, if you're trying to guess a code, like a PIN code, and it's like 10 digits long, that's not, it's like, if it's just 1 digit long, you have a 1 in 10 chance of success. But then when there's 2 digits, it's a 1 in 100 chance of success now, because it's 10 times 10. Could be 1 1, could be 0 0, could be 2 2, or it could be like 1 2, or 1 3, or 3 1, or so there's 100 options now, and then 3 digits, 1,000 options, etc. So like, by the time you got 10, what is that, like a billion or something, or more options. So, and yeah, but basically, like, I kind of thought it'd be interesting. I was like, what am I going to talk about? It's like, oh well, it's fine. Yeah, something's going to pop up. There's always more to say. And I thought, like, oh yeah, interesting. Like, we are all going to be dead at some point, and who knows, like, what the ultimate fate of the universe is. Or I think we'll always still be here in some way. Someone will, or like we will, and the deepest part of us will, I believe. But will we be talking, or will we just be like, oh, hanging out, lounging in the heart of the universal sun? I mean, I don't know. You tell me. But nonetheless, let's take a more conventional view of things and say, the sun melts the earth, or whatever, and let's say humans are gone one day or whatever. Um, there would still be things we could never say, or even within our own lifetimes, there's more than you'll ever be able to say, more interesting and unique things. Um, so I kind of want to talk kind of about, like, what a conversation is, and then why, upon that understanding, you know, it's like overflowing with possibility for things to talk about, interesting things. So basically, I think, like, life is evolving, the universe is evolving. You got like the Big Bang, and where did that come from? Where did it happen? Why did it happen on that particular time? These are all valid questions which get overlooked kind of by the mainstream materialist paradigm. Like, give me one miracle and I'll explain everything. That kind of, as was it Terence McKenna um, satired it. Um, but uh, but yeah, just with that basic understanding, and then there's some truth to that, right? And then there's the mystery around, like, the other, what we can't perceive and measure with our instruments and stuff, but could still totally be there in the background, the unseen mechanics of the universe. Just like if we didn't have noses, we wouldn't know that smell existed, and we'd be like, "What? There's no other senses. What are you talking about?" It's like, well, if you gave everyone noses, then suddenly, like, oh, okay, there is something. Oh yeah, that makes sense how it fits in, or it's like particles going in. Okay, so there is another sense possible, actually. What other senses are possible? Like, could there be like 44 senses that some alien being has, just because they're just picking up different streams of data? Um, so, but yeah, so you got like this, you like imagine someone hitting like the cue ball breaking, in pool, and they start, hit the white ball and it hits all the color balls and they all go everywhere. in the kind of Newtonian mechanics, like basic understanding of things, it's like, there's the Big Bang and everything started, shooting outwards in every direction, and I don't know, a bunch of stuff happened, but like things are evolving, and the universe is expanding into what, you might ask? Okay, let's not worry about that right now. But things are, any particular point of the universe seems to be moving and evolving, and there's these cascades of energy, kind of interweaving and returning into each other and separating and coming back together, etc. So you've got, like, say, the physical universe, and then like heavier elements, things combine and get like cooked up in the heart of stars or something, and then that's where you get these heavier elements, and then they condense into planets and stuff, and you have organic life developing, say, on Earth there, and then you have the history of life on Earth, and there's all these layers and layers of development where all the previous layers continue to exist. It's still just, energy. It's still just, and then on top of that, it's protons, electrons, and neutrons, these microstructures. And, when did they develop? Were they there from the beginning of the Big Bang? Who knows? I don't know. Maybe some physicist knows. And then, you have gold, and you have silver, and you have carbon, and you have boron, what is it, borium? I don't know, whatever. Nitrogen. You have all these different elements, not to mention cadmium, right, and cadmium, and they are all just protons, electrons, and neutrons. So it's like in the heart, in the nucleus, there's protons and neutrons, these different, I think neutrons neutrally charged, protons positively. And then around them you have a cloud of electrons, which are negatively charged, if I remember correctly. And so, basically different elements like hydrogen or gold or like iron or whatever, they're just different numbers of protons and neutrons. Like, is it one of each, or is it 2 and 1, or 3 and 1, or 3 and 16, or whatever? I don't know. But there's different combinations of them in the nucleus, the heart of the atom. And then you have a bunch of those atoms together, and that's what we call a brick of iron or a brick of gold or whatever. And so it's simultaneously just protons, electrons, and neutrons, just like it was before any gold existed. It was just like everything's hydrogen or whatever it was. Very more simple, just one of each. I think, is that hydrogen? And yet it's different. Or just like, all these Lego blocks in the box, everything's broken. And then, say a Lego city made of, all these blocks. It's the same thing, it's just a bunch of blocks, but they've been organized in a different way, And so, this chemistry, all the combinations of all these, elements, and then molecules, combinations of elements, and then, all these different processes that occur between, the dance between these molecules and elements. That's on top of, like, it's happening, but it hasn't replaced the basic thing of just energy or just protons and electrons and neutrons. It's simultaneous. It's like a structuring. So it's an emergent higher level of organization, which it's fair enough to call its own level of reality and go, oh no, that doesn't exist. It's just protons, electrons, neutrons. Well, it's really useful to describe it and talk about that. Like, how are we going to talk about chemistry if we're just referring to everything as, protons, electrons, and neutrons? And then on top of that, these things turn into like organic life and like plants and stuff. And it gets to the point where just referring to it as the elements or molecules is no longer useful. And actually we should start calling that a leaf, that a stem, and that a flower, and whatever. And so, but it's simultaneously just energy, just protons and electrons and neutrons, just chemistry, and yet it's also these biological systems. And then you have more and more complicated, systems, amoebas up to like, trees and, humans and all this, animals and plants and fungi. And then on top of that, you have, say human society, you have like, civilization. And you could say maybe some chimps and stuff have society, or some dolphins and stuff. They have social creatures, birds, you know. These societies, systems where these biological agents are actually interacting in kind of feedback loops where they affect each other. And oh, okay, if this agent expresses itself that way, it it causes this reaction among the others. So you get that whole game theory kind of thing where like they start taking into account where like, oh, like it's not just basing, you know, what do I want right now, but it's like, oh, what I want and how I can get it depends on what the other people want and how they can get it. So okay, and then there's these feedback loops of like empathy and like, okay, intelligence and yeah, social connection, social bonds, and you know, light and dark sides of that, competition and cooperation. Um, and then you know, your advanced society where you know humans are basically you know getting enough nutrition with the brain and I guess doing enough things, developing enough synapses in the brain through hunting, or whether it's cooking red meat, or whether it's psychedelic mushrooms, stoned ape theory, or however it worked. There's this ascent into higher and higher consciousness, and we become self-aware, like, oh, right, here I am, or maybe not totally self-aware, but like there's this sense of me. I guess you could say it's ego, you know, moving up into ego, whereby we feel that we're separate from the environment, and we can think about the past and the future and imagination. And so we're kind of creating these virtual realities in our own minds, you know. And you could say that that's not real, but where's it happening? It's happening in the universe, right? So it's just another level. Just like we were saying, you know, there's biology, and it's valid to say that that's really happening. It's really there, even though it's simultaneously indistinguishable from just the atomic, you know, interactions of the billiard balls of atoms, protons, electrons, neutrons, or just the sea of energy spilling forth from the Big Bang. It's still useful and valid to regard it in its own right as real. And so, you know, like our virtual worlds of like consciousness and what we're thinking, and like this is a real thing that's happening, but it's just on a higher level of organization of these lower level, so to speak, more fundamental, earlier developed structures in the flow of evolution of the universe through time. And then, so you have these, you know, humans thinking and talking, basically, and through language, we're able to, you know, have memory and anticipation and imagination, and we're able to do this with ourselves and with others. And then we start, you know, acting things out, you know, maybe that was even earlier, I guess, but having like drama, and then, you know, turn that into literature, and then turn that maybe into, I don't know, like religion, and then maybe like extract from that like philosophy, and maybe then science, or, you know, like, you know, kind of more methodical, which I would say is, you know, just natural philosophy. I like the old name for science, natural philosophy. But where you basically, it's philosophy, it's a branch of it, whereby you're running experiments, you're talking to the material universe, basically, or by carefully setting up causal flows of activity. Like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, and if I do the exact same thing here and here, except I change one element in the situation here and here, then I can maybe learn something about the unseen mechanics of how this whole thing is working. And then through feedback, you can start to figure out what's going on, and then apply that to expand your knowledge and create more sophisticated experiments. And so it's, you know, basically thinking and talking and philosophy, but yeah, and so that's nested on top of that. And so you know, reading and writing, you know, like there was language long before there was reading and writing. So you know, this, like I'm speaking right now, and these are symbols which are going, you know, turning into vibration in the air, and then it's a flow of sounds I'm making, and someone who doesn't understand English, they have no idea what I'm saying. It's just a bunch of noise, right? And it is right now also that. It's simultaneously, it's just a bunch of sound, noise, meaningless, and yet also meaningful if you have the code, and if you can decipher it. And if you're listening to this, I presume you're automatically deciphering this with your internal dictionary. You have the codes, at least a lot of it you have made automatic in your mind through study and discipline and repetition, And so a lot of this, just as it comes in, you don't have to do anything, just automatically, unconscious competence, automatically it's just being decoded and arriving in your field of meaning and understanding. Or maybe some people need to work more to understand what's going on. Say if this is your foreign language, for example. But yeah, I'm talking and it's, turning into it's just vibrations going, my face is moving, my throat, my lungs, and, of course, like my, whole systems of digestion and all this, allowing me to have energy or whatever, all these body systems are producing a flow of encoded or encrypted vibration, which is moving, mechanical waves moving through the air where they bump, there's a pressure of, air bumping into the next air, which then bumps into the next air, like a bunch of pool balls bumping into one another, and the waves of millions of pool balls kind of moving through space. That's basically the air molecules passing that vibration, and different types of vibration, into the the microphone, and then that gets turned into ones and zeros through, my interface thing, and then it's going into another, my computer, and then the internet, and your device, and being deciphered into sound. And it's not really my voice that you're hearing right now. It's a reproduction. I don't sound like that. It's I sound like that, but not exactly like that. You can turn down the volume. You can't turn down my volume, even if you try, world government. I guess you could turn down the volume if you censor me, but maybe the volume elsewhere, not the volume right here where I am. But yeah, and so then it goes into your ears, and your brain understands it as, oh, the original meaning I was conveying or apprehending as I'm thinking here or talking. So yeah, and now, right. So this is, but that's the basic level of language. But then there's these other symbols of like visual symbols, and so like even there's different symbols for the same thing, like American versus British English, like will have different spelling, like dialogue. There's just the UE just gets dropped on the American one at the end, and it's like, okay, so the symbols are quite different, right? Or like simplified versus traditional Chinese, or Mandarin, so it's different symbols, but the same auditory symbol or oral symbol, yeah. So it's a different set of symbols, and you can have even different alphabets. Like Japanese, they'll have like you can write stuff in like the Latin like Romanji, I think they call it, like the Latin alphabet. I think that's what they call it. I think they're just using the Roman alphabet for. Maybe they use it only for foreign words. Not sure. Anyway, whatever. But you can have languages where they'll have the or like Irish, that have like Ogham for writing things, and then they had the Irish Celtic script, which is, I believe, the only other version of the Roman alphabet, because basically the Irish were influenced by the Roman Empire. Their empire collapsed, but it hadn't colonized Ireland, so Ireland maintained political stability as the Dark Ages began, and then kind of went through and had the Christianity, and kind of, had monasteries teaching people and studying ancient Greek and Latin and stuff, and then kind of colonized Europe with monasteries and spread that. But so they had their own script, which they developed, and then later, like the other script, I guess, which was from like Rome itself, from Italy. I think that's where it came from, spread, and then eventually became dominant in Ireland also. Anyway, but so in Irish you'd have like the Ogham, the old, kind of writing, and then the Celtic Latin script, and then the modern Roman alphabet. But you're saying the same words with these different symbols, right? Anyway, so these are different levels, right, of like all this stuff, like these, what I've just been saying here, I guess, is of things happening, like literature and drama and philosophy and stuff. The punchline being like, this is all simultaneously also those lower levels of just, social dynamics, just energy within social systems, biological agents doing stuff, also just molecules and chemistry, and also just atomic physics and just energy moving, it's all these things. It never stopped being those other things. You know, it's simultaneous. It's built on top of it. Um, and so basically, even with these higher level things, when you're having a conversation, you are, it is just a flow. It's simultaneous. It's not just talking. It's also a simultaneous flow of energy, protons, electrons, neutrons, elements, molecules, biology, sociology, philosophy, all these things up, you know, language and, you know, philosophy. And so, yeah, or maybe not philosophy in every conversation, but, and so, and then, so it is that, right? Now, and then you can talk, you can give people instructions like, oh, have that cake, or hey, don't do that, or come here, or wait for me, or, you know, and you can, you know, give yourself instructions, the same thing. You can give yourself or others advice, like, well, it's probably not a good idea, or that's probably the best thing to do. You can, what else? Describe things. Say, oh, what is that? Oh, I guess that's a painting of this, blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, I think that's a little mouse running off in the distance. Or maybe it's some sort of insect, but closer up. It's hard to tell, or whatever it is, you know. So you can describe things that are happening. But I guess you can, with language, it's these feedback loops where language is allowing you to kind of curve energy. The energy, language, when we're talking, it is just the energy of creation in flow, but it can kind of, interestingly, cause these, you know, effects of like these feedback loops of, say, like, for example, being like, oh, I don't feel good. Why don't I feel good? Oh, what did I do? Well, I guess I ate a bunch of sugar, and then I ate a bunch of sugar. Huh. I wonder if that's, oh yeah, I remember someone saying maybe that causes inflammation and makes you not feel so good if you eat too much. Oh, maybe that's why I'm feeling bad. Maybe I'm feeling bad because of sugar. And so you're modeling, you know, there's an isomorphism where your linguistic symbols are mimicking or modeling the nature of reality, the structure of what's happening, of the flow of evolution through time in the last hour or whatever in your little part of the universe. And so and then that's interesting, right? And that's kind of descriptive. And then there can be prescriptive, either for myself or others, being like, oh, well, maybe I should not do that again. And maybe I will, if I don't do it, then maybe I'll feel better. Maybe if I eat just a little, okay, or none. And then, you know, you don't do it, you don't eat the sugar, and that next time, and oh, I feel good. Oh, maybe I won't do this ever again, or whatever. You can see that language, these symbols are causing very real effects in biology. Your body feels different. So language, it's just an expression of biology. But if you were just to look at the biological level, you'd be, oh, interesting. Why is that pattern happening? Oh, it was kind of like getting more and more inflammation and, you know, more problems, and then suddenly it's better. Weird. I wonder why. You know? But then it's like, oh, actually, if you could look at zoom out and look at the higher level, there was language there. That process of biology, the body, which which is that biological system, on the level of the brain of that and the mind, those nested hierarchies of like flowing creation, things happening. The language was talking about like, oh, too much sugar. Maybe I should have less sugar, and that caused you know, the vision of, oh yeah, maybe things will be better if I don't do it. And we descend, you know, that particular person is descended from all the people who heeded such instincts and thus, you know, thrived more than humans who were a bit, you know, dim to the advice of, you know, reality or the patterns of reality. And so the person did it, and they're, oh, okay, I will have less sugar. And then there's improved biology, healthier body. And so you can see, oh, that's the causality. Like on the high level, that biology was being expressed as certain language, which fed back into decisions of like moving the physical body, and which affect, or you could say, biological decisions on the biological level, which are affecting the chemistry level, you know. And and this, I won't bore you / blow your mind with too many examples, but you get the idea, like where we're modeling what we see, and just like you can watch people, you can watch kids playing the ball. Like there's some kids out here hanging out and they're playing with the ball. I was looking at them before, like, oh, there they are. Like I'm not doing it. I'm just kind of watching them. Oh yeah, there they are. All right. And in a way, that's kind of what language is doing. It's kind of just taking in what's already happening in its these layers feeding back over itself within the universe. And so if you think about it, then okay, so that's language, and language can also interestingly allow you to go beyond language, where you can say if you meditate or if you just read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle or whatever other book, but that's the one I would recommend. It gets very straight to the point. That you can access a higher state of consciousness where you can live without language and you're just present. And what I think is happening there is the original energy that began this whole thing with the Big Bang and all that, the primordial basic energy, it becomes conscious of itself. And it turns out that that energy, is it conscious or unconscious? Do you know? Are you that smart? Do you know? I don't know. But well, in theory, a priori, I don't know. But then through experiencing, like following the steps of, the wise people have laid out before us, if we want to take their help, I've been able to experience not thinking, and then it's just naturally understood. Like, and this is what many people say. It's like, oh, you just understand, like, oh, I am that, and we're all one, And so what seems to be happening is that primordial reality or energy or whatever it is, essence, it turns out that it is conscious. Is it conscious or not conscious? One of the two, right? It turns out it's the first one. And it would seem, it is, from my point of view. And yeah, and so that you can also use language to get outside of language, where you could say, like, okay, I'm thinking, I don't need to think. I would like to just kind of experience the now without that. All right, so I should put my attention into my body and just pay attention to what's going on in my body. And that's going to anchor me into the present moment and calm down the thinking, because I can't think and pay attention to my body at the same time. And then I can just rest in, my consciousness will grow and I can kind of get into orbit and, just be able to rest there without struggling so much. But I need to put in a bit of a push here just to get into orbit. All right, here we go. And then, okay, you're in the zone and you're just present. And so language is also enabling the primordial energy to kind of become aware of itself, which is pretty wild. But yeah, so I don't know, there's many things language can do, and conversations with yourself or others, or God. I guess God's other and self. But yeah, so now then, why are there always more things to say? Well, if you think about how a conversation goes, or like say this podcast, like there's things where I could go left or right, or do I keep talking more about this, or do I go, no, okay, focus, that's beyond the scope of this, I'll, like that mysticism stuff just there, I'm like, okay, that's enough. Or I could have not even mentioned it and just go and talk about other stuff. And, there's all these forks in the road, and then some of them circle back, others don't. Or I could, circle back and do like kind of a loop, and then have gone another tangent, and then circle back to the same idea again. There's so many, or I could just go straight and then come back to them at the end. There's many different paths in the field of ideas. And I think, language is basically mapping out the terrain of reality of these various lower levels, right? Of, philosophical, or I could say that's above it, but yeah, these levels of, say, sociology, biology, chemistry, etc., down. Turtles, turtles all the way down. Down with turtles. Actually, no, turtles are okay. So language is mapping out these things, and a map is not the terrain, it's not the same thing. You can't hike a map, but you can use a map to hike, It mirrors the terrain. There's an isomorphism, a structural similarity. And language is doing that through metaphor. Oh, sometimes you can't make an omelet without breaking an egg. It's like, well, is that like a logical argument for why you should do something? Egg cracks, therefore, you know, to be healthy, you should, suffer a little bit, with going running, whatever. How does that? Oh, wait, how's the egg connected to running? That seems totally different. There's a structural similarity in that. Okay, breaking one thing, it loses its form. Another thing is created. Oh, that's kind of similar to I break the form of my comfortable, cozy little existence here in order to then get this nutritious or nourishing experience of growth. And oh, I see. So there's so many things that are different. Okay, eggs are physical, running is more of a process. Eggs are food, running is exercise. There's all these differences, but our minds focus in on the structural similarity so that we can extract some sort of meaning from it. We go, oh, I see. I understand now, and enough that I could apply that in action, or in conversation with others. And so that's kind of like metaphor, and all language to some degree, I think, is metaphor. And what we call metaphors is just the most obvious type of metaphor. But yeah, so language is literally a metaphor, metaphorically. Anyway, so this is what language is doing, and so there's sort of the map of language, of the space of possible, we can map out the language space, make these maps. We can follow the maps of others, and we can also make our own maps, based on experience. Go, oh, okay, that's what I'm doing here. I'm making a map of what I've noticed through my experiences, right? And you're kind of looking at the map and go, oh yeah, I see what you mean. Oh yeah, and you in your own mind maybe going, oh yeah, and you might copy down a few things into your own kind of map. You might leave some things out. You might, add some things of your own. But so it's this map making thing of mapping out reality with language, and so that terrain, like it's real, right? It's this terrain. Yes, but it's simultaneously these lower levels, like we talked about a bunch of times, right? Or at least I talked about. You politely listened, and of like biology, physics, whatever, etc. So now, when we're choosing which direction do I go in a thought process just with myself, or in a thought process with others, which you could call a conversation. Do I just gossip? Do I just talk, make small talk about the weather? Or do I, ask them what they do for happiness as in a sense of meaning? Or make a joke about death? And people are like, oh my God, this guy's crazy, what's going on? Or do you ask people a question? Or do you make a comment? All these choices, do I talk about this or that? Or do I squeeze that in? Or do I speed this up? Or do I slow that down? Whatever. Directions we're taking, we're exploring the idea space. It's like in a video game, you're kind of, the map's all black, and then you're kind of going here and there, and you're kind of opening it up. And so that is simultaneously a flow of biology, and biology is choosing, oh, the energy goes to that neuron and not this neuron, like in my brain, and all the vibration goes slightly changed because it gets excited talking about this thing, and so the vibration, the brain waves are a bit different, therefore the chemistry changes a little bit, or there's a bit more dopamine or something or whatever. And then, that means a bunch of dopamine, molecules, whatever, going down that way. More dopamine to R5, and then that's made of protons, electrons, and neutrons. And so there's a flow. The way I'm talking, it's determining the flow of even like the basic atomic and energetic level of what's going on in my brain. And that has a connection, it's intrinsically connected, one with the wider reality. And anyway, then there's also the level of like language, and it's affecting other, say you and your brain. So it's affecting that flow of atoms and whatever, chemistry and stuff, is affecting the flow of atoms and chemistry, et cetera, in your brain and other brains. And then if you're like, oh, wow, I think I want to go make an omelet and then go running, then again, your body's being influenced on a biological, chemical level, et cetera. So, but also just like through resonance, and things are in resonance, in the universe, and everything's on some level, just energy, vibration, and so there are these connections even apart from these kind of loops. So it's all higgity piggledy and spaghetti intimate, and tied together. And so which path do I choose? Do I go this way? That's on one level, that's why there's always more to talk about, because there's so many things you have to choose and there's never enough time to go through them. There's so many different paths and there's so many different ways to do it. And I only get to have this podcast once. Then there's other things to talk about, or you have a conversation with someone once. You could have the same conversation later, but they're going to be like, oh, well, we kind of talked about this already. And so it's kind of like opportunity cost, or it's this or that. Like which way are we going to do it? We're going to talk about this kind of once. Sometimes there's certain things where people are happy and interested enough to talk about them many times, but that's a smaller subset of topics that people are going to be interested enough and they're not going to get frustrated and walk away from you. And also there's time limits. There's certain things like, oh, what should I do? Well, the moment can pass after maybe 3 weeks from now. It doesn't matter. It's gone. So then those conversations can't happen again. And so there's things, you don't get to go back and have those conversations. You have it one way, but then things move on, and then, all right, there was more than could ever be said, but even just going forward, always there's going to be more. And the thing is, so there's these choices we make in how we're mapping out reality with language, and there's just so many different paths. So it's like just squadrillions, infinite different pathways that we could take, and so there's always more to say, on that level. But then it's not just that, because it's not just that we're mapping out reality with description and then prescription, kind of what should we do, and that kind of thing. What would the mysticism one be? Description, prescription, misdescription, miscription. I don't know, misdescription, mysticism. Whatever. Tell me in the comments, what is it called? Map out my reality, baby. So it's not just that, because reality is, on the energetic, atomic, chemical, molecular, biological, sociological, cultural, literary, religious or spiritual, or ideological, scientific, technological, linguistic, psychic, etc., whatever levels, going up and up, artistic. This flow of creation, it's still happening and it's still developing, and there's still the same novelty which created the Big Bang is every moment bringing in novel things, and things that haven't happened before, and that could be like a result of just like the snowball effect of what's happened before. But also, if you wake up, then you become that primordial intelligence, or you realize you have been it all along, but it re-enters the causal stream in a pure form rather than just this momentum form, and then you can bring in free will. That's what I believe is going on. I think you can have free will only when you connect to that silence and that oneness, that cosmic energy and that cosmic consciousness, which is who we all are, really. Behind, you're the human, but like really what's animating that is this cosmic intelligence, this God, and so it's the Christ, it's the Son of God, or you could say the daughter of God. It's like the child, like the small God, human God. God is a human rather than God is everything. I don't know what's going on in Alpha Centauri, but I know what's going on here. And that means I'm God, because only God can know what's going on anywhere. God is the universe, the cosmos. Anyway, so all these things are developing, and so you can bring in the original energy through that, and then that's also going to cause more developments. And I think I'm doing that to some extent here, my podcast, whatever. And I think anytime you really connect deeply with yourself, there's a feeling of or artists with creativity, or anyone who's just kind of a deeper person, or someone who's got a capacity for stillness and maybe a deep kind of authenticity, then that will be coming forth also there, I think. And then there's also like unseen beings, like there's, I don't know, but I think there's probably like spirits all around us that we can't see, that have been evolving. Just like all these other levels have been evolving, there's these astral level evolving, or whatever it is, and we can only perceive the rainbow out of which is a tiny little sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. So how do we know that the rainbow appears to us as this concrete three-dimensional reality of like protons, electrons, neutrons, and all this stuff, biology and whatever. But perhaps we only perceive the things that are immediately relevant to our survival on the biological level, and then we're kind of piggybacking on that and trying to expand our minds and starting to understand, like, oh well, actually there's all these other layers to this which weren't immediately relevant to not getting eaten by tigers, but are actually still there. But it was like, hey, what am I going to focus on? What's going on in the astral, or how to avoid tigers? How to avoid tigers, right? So it's like perceiving things in this very limited sense. But it's got to open up this space now, because we have this global, conversation, civilization, and relative freedom from predation. Relative, WF still trying their best, where we can have these expansive explorations of understanding. But like, it's just like, oh, we wouldn't know about, smell if we didn't have it. Like, there could be gas in the room and you have no idea, what else could be going on that we just haven't? It's totally measurable if you have the instruments, and we don't have the organic instruments in our bodies just because of the whims of this particular flow of evolution that we're on here, and not to have arrogance to presume that this is the only path and the only way that things have been developing. So it's totally plausible in my mind that there are these beings, and I think it probably is the case. That's what I feel. That all around us there are these other beings, some of whom could interact with us to some extent. But and so then they could also, if they've got their own causal streams, which are having effects on biology, atoms, culture, whatever, and also if they're connecting to the oneness, then they're also bringing in original flows of energy and direction or whatever. So anyway, there's it's not just that language. There's more conversation, more to say than can ever be said, because just like, oh, you have to choose paths, opportunity cost. But it's also like things are always developing, and so we're keeping up with what's happening, And there's the dance of like, what do I say and what do you say in a conversation together, And you'll have that feeling of, like, in a really good conversation, you have that feeling of like it's overflowing. Oh, there's like 3 things I'm keeping in the back of my head while you're talking. And then you say something, I go, oh yeah, and then maybe I talk and I kind of make 2 of the points, and you go, oh yeah, and then that makes me think. And then I can see in your eyes it's more important. What you're saying is more important for both of us. Like, you got some particularly juicy thing, where I've just got something that's pretty juicy. But like, I can say, oh no, you go. What is it? And then you say it, and I go, oh yeah. And then maybe I get mine off. Now I've got nothing in the back of my head now, And we're talking, and you've got 2 things in the back of your head, or you've got nothing, or whatever. But then soon enough, like, oh, I'll pick up another thing. Like, oh, okay, I'll let you go on, or whatever. I'll just hold that for later, But I can't let that go, So these little paths and tangents where we're collecting, and in a beautiful conversation, it's like, overflowing with possibility, and we're traveling, we're visiting, we're exploring and adventuring through all of the universe, even though we're only here in the molecular or biological or like atomic sense, we're only these particular, constituent parts of reality, not the whole universe. Although we're all connected energetically, we are the whole universe, because it's all just one sea of energy. We're this wave, but is the wave not the ocean? Oh, that's not the Atlantic Ocean, that's just a wave. But what do you mean? The Atlantic Ocean is waves, most of it, like what are they if they're not the Atlantic Ocean? Where do they come from? Where do they go back to? Like, they spend almost their whole existence as the Atlantic Ocean, and then they're temporarily here. You're saying it's not the ocean? What? No, it's part of the ocean. And so we're here. I've got my limited part of the universe. On a deep level, it is the whole universe I'm intimate with here, and I'm everywhere, and you're everywhere. We're all everywhere. But on a more conventional level, we could say, I've only got my little part of the universe here, on this level of the basic, atomic, biological, etc. Level. But then through language, I am able to explore and by mapping out the whole terrain of the universe, I am exploring and becoming intimate again with all, it's like a homecoming, kind of like, it's like, adventurous homecoming, like kind of like getting in touch with all that, we have come from, like what life is, which we are, but then also like exploring what's it up to now, what's the latest news, what's going on, and so and then this becomes part of the, like I said, there's these feedback loops. So we talk about what's happening, and then that affects what happens, Like, people go, oh, people are trying to take over the world, and then it causes a peaceful revolution, the revolution that has no enemies. And people are like, oh, peace most profound. And you know, that, so language is mapping things out, but then it's also, then it's like, oh, okay, now we have to map out what we just, you know, we're interfering with the experiment, you know, like, but yeah, in a good way. So anyway, those are my thoughts on why there's always more to say. There will always be more to say. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's like, we don't need to be greedy for it. There's a balance. There's a point of not talking enough for most people, I think, and then talking too much. But again, all things in balance, I think it makes sense that there's some people who just don't talk at all. They're like on a side, have a vow of silence. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm like, yeah, cool, that's you. But for most people, I don't think that's the point of balance. And there's some people who need to talk a lot. Not like me, for example, but like, and that's also a point of balance. Like that's natural for them, and for everyone. Like some people are doing that, but most people, you know, somewhere in the middle. And yeah, we don't need to feel like, oh, I can never say enough, but also not to, you know, it's a beautiful thing to feel like, oh yeah, there's this abundance, feeling of an abundance of ideas, or a conscious abundance, like so much to be conscious of, and it's just like, you know, beautiful, luscious, colorful fruit floating from the trees, being like, pick me, and, you know, taste me, you know, and you go, okay, let's, and then, you know, you go on a little roller coaster ride of like thinking about things or being aware of things, and ultimately it's the fruit is on a roller coaster experiencing itself. All right, so I'd say that's enough linguistic mapping for today. So if you enjoyed this, please subscribe, hit the notification bell. I believe that will is required for you to be notified when I have new episodes. And new episodes come out every Friday. And tell your friends, tell your mothers, tell people on the street. And if you have requests for things to talk about, let me know. And yeah, enjoy the journey, as I will. All right, see you next week.